Alright, so this is our very first trig video, and lesson 1 is defining angles. You have a lot of words worth knowing here. Yes, I do want you to write them all in your table of contents, in your words worth knowing, because they're all important and we're going to be using them and you need to know what they are. A lot of these I'm going to be discussing as we go through the lesson, so I'm not going to go through those now, but normally I'll go through the words worth knowing at the start. So go ahead and fold your foldable just like this. And let's start with the top two tabs, the initial and terminal sides. So the initial side is the ray where the angle begins. And on the flip side of that, the terminal side, if you can think of, this is a little morbid, but terminal patients, it's the ray where the angle ends. So just like life ends is where the ray ends. All right. Now in the middle here on this grid, we're going to go ahead and draw an angle. Put one ray on the positive x-axis, and then the other ray over here in the second quadrant, like that. And we're going to use a symbol that you might not have seen before, and that is theta. Okay, so I'm putting this arrow here to show that this is the direction that the ray is opening, and theta is a symbol for an angle. Okay, so in the past, you've always been given the angle, like this might be 65 degrees, but now we have a variable specified for angles, and that is theta. So if you're looking at this angle, how you can tell what the initial and terminal sides are is based on this little arrow in here. So this is the initial side. It's where the ray begins. And so grab your highlighter and highlight that side. And if you can guess, the ray over here is the terminal side. That's where the angle ends. And using those terms is just helpful whenever we're discussing an angle, if you know what we're referring to when we say the initial side, where it begins, or the terminal side, where it ends. Now if you look at the next two tabs, we have standard position and not standard position. So standard position has two parts to it. First of all, the vertex of the angle is at the origin (0, 0). So if we're putting an angle in standard position, the vertex has to be right there at the origin. The second part of this is that the initial side lies on the positive x-axis. So the initial side has to lie over here. In my first example, I went ahead, and this is actually an example of standard position. As long as you have these two criteria met, then you're good. So the terminal side can be anywhere. It can be in the third quadrant. And actually, your angle can rotate in the opposite direction. So you can have the initial side over here and the terminal side over here and be going clockwise rather than counterclockwise. So you can go either direction. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But the important part is that the vertex, I'm going to highlight that, is at 0, 0. And then the initial side has to lie on that positive x-axis. As long as those two things are true, then you have standard form. Now, not standard position is basically anything other than standard. And once you get used to looking at these angles, non-standard position is going to look really weird. Like, for example, say your vertex is way over here in the second quadrant. Here's your initial side, and here's your terminal side. That's just really confusing to look at, and it's hard to tell what's going on and how big the angle is. The whole point of standard position is to make it really obvious how big the angle is, which direction it's going. There's a frame of reference when it's in standard position. Whereas over here, can we even tell if it's going counterclockwise or clockwise? Can we tell how big the angle is? Can we tell if it's bigger than 90 degrees? It's very difficult. So we don't ever draw anything not in standard position. Lastly, we have positive and negative angles. And this just refers to the direction that your angle is going. So for positive angles, these are generated in a counterclockwise direction. In other words, like that. So if we go over here and we draw an angle in standard position, the vertex is at 0, 0. The initial side is on the positive x-axis. And we draw our terminal side over here. A positive angle would go in the counterclockwise direction, like so. Another way you can think of it is you're going up. Whenever you're leaving the initial side, you start drawing up rather than down. And that's counterclockwise. And then for a negative angle, it's the opposite. A negative angle is generated in a clockwise direction. And so if we put our vertex at the origin and our initial side on the positive x-axis, and let's draw our terminal side in the exact same location. The only difference now is it's a negative angle because it's going clockwise. And so here you can notice that you go down from the start, and that's clockwise. And there you have it. That is our very first lesson. Come in tomorrow, just make sure you know these words, and we'll do some practice with it.